Welcome back to the Aussie Shed, ladies and gentlemen, for another episode of the DIY Nissan 370 GT twin turbo build. The time has come to remove the automatic transmission. Reason being, I'm fitting a Fast Intentions billet flex plate as just part of a whole heap of sort of minor work I'm doing on the engine. Flex plate's in preparation for other things. The transmission's already been shift kitted. It's been done for a couple of years. It's going quite well. How it holds up for the turbos, well, that's sort of something for the future. But future transmission mods are on the cards. But like I say, at this stage, I'm just going to fit the billet flex plate, and we're also about to embark on doing the gallery gaskets and other maintenance stuff for the engine while it's in this position. So sit back and relax, folks, while I get the transmission out. There it is, folks. The gearbox is off, exposing the factory flywheel. Let's get that sucker off. Here we are back at the bench, folks. Just making a couple of quick checks before I put the flywheel on. I don't expect there to be any issues here, but just for my own peace of mind, I'd like to check the torque converter mounting positions, which are here on the standard flywheel, in relation to the mounting face off the crankshaft on this side here. So I've just got a known flat surface. It's not super duper duper flat, but it is very flat. And just a couple of spaces, one of them being the outer ring off the flex plate. And I've just sat them down so that I have a position that gives me a height off the face of the mounting face of the original flywheel. So I've just got a vernier caliper here with a foot mounted on it, and I'm just going to use that to measure down through the holes onto the top of the granite there, which will give me a height reference in relation to the underside mounting face of the flex plate, as long as the Fast Intentions flywheel sits on those same two spaces. We'll be able to use the same reference point. So I'll just zero out the vernier and just record what I have here. Now, like I say, all this is not super accurate, but it is accurate enough. 27.03. I'll just write that down. 27.03. $26.83. $27.10. And 27.08. Now, those variations in measurement could be due to the stuff that I've got it sitting on, this granite slab not being perfectly flat, but it gives us a ballpark figure. All we need is our measurements to be close, so we know we're not affecting the torque converter position, because there is a little bit of play with the torque converter, but you can't go doing anything silly. Fortunately, we're using the factory torque converter, otherwise we would have to check the position of the torque converter in relation to the bell housing on the transmission, and we would also have to do this and then calculate all the measurements together to make sure we're not going to have any issues with expansion on the torque converter closing up the clearances too much, so we'd have issues. So let's get the stocker off and we'll get the Fast Intentions flywheel on here and give it a bit of a look. Rightio, so as I mentioned, as long as we use those same spaces, we should be absolutely fine to check these. 28.7. $28.6. 28.6. 28.8. So it appears that the mounting face for the torque converter, which is here on the Fast Intentions flywheel, it's about 1 millimeter thicker, or it's about 1 millimeter further away from the crank mounting face than my standard flywheel is. Now, as far as I'm aware, that won't be a problem, but now I will just go and check the torque converter position against the transmission just to make sure that there's not going to be any issues. I'm sure 1 millimeter will be absolutely irrelevant in this situation. Alright, folks, it's time to make a few measurements here. As you can see, I've got a straight piece of whatever. It's just some aluminium rectangular tube just clamped up against the bell housing there. I'm just using the depth function on my digital vernier. I do have a foot plate on there, so it gives me a pretty reasonably accurate measurement. So what I'll do, I'll zero out the vernier footplate. And I know that this is exactly 30 millimeters. Okay, so what I have there is about 38.09 on that side, and on this side I have 38.21. Now that's due to the fact that we just bolted up to the torque converter, and it has a little bit of movement still, so it could be not sitting perfectly like parallel to the bar, so hence you'll get that little bit of variation in your measurements. 38.09, 38.06, so you know, they're our measurements. Now I'll just quickly flip this tube over here just to make sure that there's no error for any bend in this straight edge that we're using here, because it's not actually a straight edge, you know, it's just a piece of, it's just sort of an offcut. So 38.09, 38.03, so it sort of varies a little bit because you are actually moving it as you're touching it, you know. It's being 30 millimeters exactly, we've got just over 8 millimeters of clearance between and the back of the bell housing mounting face on the engine block. So what we have to do now is go over to the engine block, set this bar up across the back of the block across this mounting face, and then measure the depth to the mounting face on the crankshaft for the flywheel or flex plate. So as long as we've got less than 8 millimeters protrusion of the crankshaft past the bell housing mounting face, we should be pretty right. I've also checked the mounting positions for the flywheel on the torque converter with the factory service manual. Now they say 25 millimeters minimum, and then it just has a plus after it. So measuring in the same way with a straight edge across here to the mounting face on the torque converter, we have 27 millimeters, so that we know our torque converter distance off the bell housing is within spec. So as I say, we'll go and set up on the back of the motor, and we're looking for less than 8 millimeter protrusion of the crankshaft past the bell housing mounting face. Rightio folks, let's see what we've got here. So what we've got to basically do here is just hold this against the mounting face for the flywheel there, because there's no way to, like, we can't clamp it onto the bell housing just because, you know, it's the recessed sort of thing here. So there's enough mounting flange there on the crankshaft that it's actually quite easy to hold it without it rocking from side to side. But because we'll be taking measurements from both sides, we'll sort of quickly realise whether or not we're rocking on anything. Because you do have things like the dowel pins here. If you're sitting on a dowel pin on one side and you know, you're measuring across or anything, you'll get an obvious difference in your measurement from side to side. So we're looking for less than 8 millimeters. Let's see what we've got here. 7.2. This side. Yep, 7.18. So we are sitting parallel, our bar is sitting parallel, and we do have less than 8 millimeters. But as you can see, folks, there's not a lot of room for error here, so this will fit. But as I say, if you do get a different torque converter, an aftermarket torque converter or a remanufactured torque converter, you could always machine a bit off the back of the flywheel. Like, we're only talking 0.5 millimeter or so, or a millimeter, whatever the issue is. Or even where the torque converter mounts to the flywheel, you could, to the flex plate, you could machine the flex plate. That looks like a little bit of an awkward spot to machine. But yeah, there's certainly avenues that you can go to correct the problem if you do have a problem. So never fear folks, if you do find an issue, it's a fairly easy thing to correct. But this is why you have to measure everything. You can't just assume that things are going to fit. So I guess we may as well put the Fast Intentions flex plate on. Rightio. There is a dowel pin right here on the crankshaft folks, which will get you your alignment. So it's not something you have to be too concerned with about clocking the flywheel into the correct position. That will just naturally align as you go onto the dowel pin. Actually, before I start, I might just throw a little bit of oil on that surface there. You don't want a big slather of oil on there, folks. You don't want to get sort of caught in behind the flywheel, even though it will get sort of squashed out. There is a slight recess just behind there to probably take up any lube or any seeds or anything that you put on there to help slide this on. But it is a very tight fit, I would assume. It's a little bit awkward with the tripod there, folks, because the tripod's in the middle and I'm working from the side. I might just move the tripod over a bit, just so I can get more in front of it and sort of gauge what I'm doing a little bit better. Here we go. Rightio. Now I can see what I'm doing. There you go. See, folks, position is everything. When you're doing stuff, bugger me, it's hard to do things sometimes when you're not in the right spot. And as any bloody YouTubers will tell you, the camera and the tripod just gives you the shits half the time. These are your ARP bolts here, folks, that are supplied by Fast Intentions with the flywheel. They do have a anti-rusting sort of compound on them. They're very kind of sticky and have this kind of brown crap on them. I've just given them a bit of a clean with some brake cleaner. Get them nice and spanky before putting Loctite on them, so we can fit them up. So I'll just give them a good clean, because you don't really want, when you're using Loctite, you want the surface of all your threads and everything as clean as possible. So ready to go, folks. Our bolts are nice and clean. We're all set up. We're going to put a bit of blue Loctite on the bolts, and then we're going to torque them down to 80 foot-pound or 108.5 Newton meters. And we're just going to do it in an X pattern. That's the instructions from Fast Intentions, straight off the installation guide. So let's get some Loctite on these bolts and get them in. Alright folks, so 80 foot-pound. Gee, me light and everything's in the bloody pain in the arse of a spot here. I'll just move you again, guys. I need a bit of a decent spot to do this. Rightio, 80 foot-pound. Rightio. Just go around the clock. Done. Next thing to do, I guess, is get the transmission back on. Just a quick thing I forgot to mention, folks. The factory flywheel has this, it's called a torque plate. It's kind of a spacer that just sits over the top of the flywheel because the flywheel material is actually quite thin. And this helps distribute all the bolt load and the torque from the bolts evenly across the area. You don't reuse this with the fastening tensions flywheel. It's not needed, and the ARP fasteners are only long enough to go through the flywheel and into the crankshaft without this on there. And as I say, it's not needed. In the fit up instructions from Fastening Tensions, they tell you that you do not need to use this. So just something I thought I'd let you guys know. Nearly left this off. Rightio, Bellhousing Bolsters, two sizes. There's all the big ones around the top, there's some small ones underneath. All the big ones, 75 Newton meters. But not that size socket. Alright, I think that's a lot. I'll just go around them all. Rightio. All the smaller bolts around the bottom of the bell housing, we really need to get to those from underneath. So I'll get all this kind of back together, and I'll bolt the engine up to the body shell, lift it back up with the hoist, and I'll do the torque converter bolts and the lower bell housing bolts, which all need to be done from underneath the engine. But in the meantime, I'll hook the rest of the stuff up. All these dipstick bolts appear to have some sort of a thread locker on them. Let's show you there. That red sort of stuff there, so I'll just stick a bit of blue Loctite on them as I put them all back in. Torque for these guys, 5.1 Newton meters. Next we'll do these transmission coolant lines. These were held back with cable ties over here. So I'll cut the cable tie and they should go back into position right there. Just like that. Always remember the copper washers on your banjo bolts, guys. One behind, one in front. Started on there. Same with this guy. One behind, one in front. On they go. And these guys, 49 Newton meters. This is our crank angle sensor, folks, that you saw me pull it out, that just goes in this position here. All these smaller bolts on this area, they're all 5.1 Newton meters, which isn't very tight at all. So I'll probably just do them up sort of snug. I won't even bother using the torque wrench. So I guarantee I'll be over 5.9 Newton meters, or 5.1 Newton meters. But that being said, I won't strip any of them, because I'm not that silly, although my wife would probably argue that point. We'll get that guy in. Once again, I think I might use a bit of blue Loctite on this bolt, just because these things are in inaccessible positions and, you know, a lot of vibration and all that kind of thing. Blue Loctite's not the end of the world to get stuff undone. It just tends to be a good tool to stop things vibrating loose. What else we got here? So we can start sort of putting all this back. So I'm just going to throw a little bit more heat sleeving on this cable here, folks. I left it to do when I got to this point because I knew I'd be pulling it all off to do the flex plate. So these cable ties that clip into these holes on various things are get in the way of doing the heat sleeving. There's two different size ones here. This little one here, I have these guys, but I don't have these big ones. So I can happily cut this off without an issue. And this one here, I'm going to try something with this. I'm going to see if there's any teeth left on it in this little section here, so I can cut it. Pull this out, maybe. I'll have a look at this. I might be able to join another cable tie onto it. I can work something out with it. As I said, I have these in various sizes, but I don't think I have this one, so I'm going to try something a little bit fancy. But in the meantime, I can now just heat sleeve this whole thing without it being a bit of a problem. You can see the tape that holds the convoluted tubing together's sort of dried out and coming apart from the heat, and it's going to be even worse with the amount of heat that's going to be coming down beside here from the turbo dump pipe. So I'll go and grab some heat sleeving or heat wrap for this, and I'll show you what I'm going to do. So I've got a bit of a pack of this stuff here, folks. It's just an adhesive heat sleeving. I'll just open the bag up. I'll show you what we have. So we've got a length of it. You can see it's a fiberglass foil backed sort of product. This is an adhesive, so you wrap it around things and then it just sort of attaches itself to that. So basically all we need to do is just cut our length here and wrap it around and then reapply the cable ties. That's not bad, folks. You get the idea with the convoluted tubing. At least that'll contain it all. We do have an air gap with the convoluted tubing. You can put this stuff on loosely, which makes it obviously fit a little bit easier, but that's if you've got sort of loose wires running through it. But because we have the convoluted tubing, it gives us an air gap between the wires anyway. That we can just sort of use to our advantage. So now that can go back on, and all we've got to do is redo our cable ties. So like I said, I have these guys. Looks like it fits better down or up. No, we'll go up. Maybe not exactly the same size. Actually, I might just run that hole out a little bit bigger, because realistically, it's only got to suit me from now on. And like I said, I do have these OE style cable ties. You can just buy these on eBay, guys. You just look up the size of what you need. They come in all sorts of sizes. Really good when you're taking stuff on and off your engine, moving wiring looms around and stuff, so you can, it all looks factory when it's all been reinstalled, you know. Let's see if that'll do it. Oh yes, like I bought one. Righto. I'll put that guy in. Lovely. Now this one, don't know if you can see, but this still has teeth. Give us a bit of focus, you can do it. It still has teeth on the back where I cut it. So I should be able to join another cable tie on it and then re-thread it through. Just shorten it slightly so it'll pull tight and thread it back through. So what I've done here, folks, I've pulled the original piece out where it was cut. This isn't the original, this is just for a demo. So basically I've pulled that out, and then I will just rejoin this onto another cable tie in this position here. We'll cut this off. So then we can reuse it, folks. We can just put this back through, obviously, and reuse it. So there's a bit of a solution, folks. If you don't have replacement cable ties and you have cut these guys, if you just kind of have a bit of a look at them, you can actually join another cable tie onto it, because the teeth go all the way back sort of to the beginning of it. So we'll get this guy on. Go. Hence the reason why I took them off to do the heat sleeving. They would just be in the way with all that. So they'll just pull down just like our original. Then we just cut the tail off. bloody get in there. So you literally wouldn't realise, folks, that that cable tie had ever been cut. Not a bad setup. Same deal for this one. Over this side, I'm going to sleeve this. It has a little bit of sleeving on it, but not enough. We'll go around that side now and have a bit of a look at that one. So this little loom here, folks, this goes down under the gearbox to the connection for the oxygen sensors. And there's, what's that one? I think this other one might go to the starter motor. But if you see down here, it runs pretty close in this area to the exhaust, where it goes underneath. Where does it mount? Oh yeah, look, it mounts here on the side of the bell housing there, so it's all running pretty close. So even though it already has some sleeving there, I'd like to take it all the way down to the bottom. So what I'll do is I'll cut the cable ties on this bracket and take the sleeving all the way. It's really this section here, and possibly extend it up a little bit right up to there. So that one can stay. We'll leave that in the middle, and we'll try to do from, say, here to here. There's obviously a wire coming out there, but we can work around that. So really all we have to do is just cut these two, and I'll have a look what size they are. They look like they're the same size as my other ones that I have there, so I can just replace these. So we'll cut this off. Do a little bit of sleeving on it. I might actually do. Where's that guy go? Yeah, it all needs sleeving right down to there. What I might do first, folks, is throw a little bit of heat sleeving on this guy here and sort of bring it up and then wrap around the join. That's ready to go back, folks. Two new cable ties on there. Just slip that bolt in. So I think we might call that done, folks. There's still a few little things like the starter motor's got to be put back in and hooked up, but basically that's the whole shebang right there. Gearbox off, new fast intentions, flex plate fitted, everything put back together, sleeve these couple of extra bits here, and we're back on track. So as always, folks, thanks for watching. Hope you found this video interesting. If you did so, remember to give it a like, subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of my content, and I'll see yous on the next one. Cheers.